The letter arrived on a Thursday morning in March. I was standing at my kitchen counter, still in my coat, car keys in my hand. I had just come back from a client walkthrough for the largest event my company had ever landed, and I was already running the numbers in my head, staffing hours, catering timelines, venue logistics, and there it was, a notice from a federal credit union. Past due. Final notice, $197,000 on a loan I had never taken out. My name was on every page, my signature was on the bottom line. And buried somewhere inside the document package I was about to request, there was a DocuSign activity log that my business partner had assumed I would never think to ask for. That log was the first thread. But to understand why it unraveled everything, you need to know exactly who my partner was and why I almost let him get away with it. By the end of this story, you will understand how a bank's own internal loan records the same documents used to hold someone liable can become the most precise legal instrument available to a fraud victim. Not a confrontation, not a lawsuit filed in anger. The metadata, the wire transfer history, the IP address on a digital signature, filed calmly, in the right order, to the right people. That is what ended my business partner's ability to do this to anyone else. I started my event production company 11 years ago. I had a used folding table, a client database kept in a spiral notebook, and almost no capital. I built it slowly, by being precise. Every vendor agreement had a paper trail. Every client confirmation had a written record. Every payment had a receipt. That habit was not taught to me. I developed it in year 1, when a vendor denied a verbal agreement I couldn't prove and walked away with a deposit I couldn't recover. I told myself I would never be in that position again. That habit would later become the reason I had anything at all to fight with. I also built a company where clients trusted me personally. I knew which venues they preferred before they told me. I once stayed on site through a 36-hour corporate conference when a vendor failed to deliver, because I would not leave a client to deal with a problem I could absorb myself. My reputation was built on one simple understanding: whatever happened, I would handle it. I had never once left a client stranded. I say that because it matters to everything that came next. In year 3, I brought in an operations partner to handle what I couldn't scale alone. He came with everything I lacked: a strong network of venue contacts across 4 cities, experience managing large-scale vendor teams, and a name that opened rooms I had been standing outside of for years. He had the kind of professional ease that made everyone around him feel like the hard decisions had already been made. He brought me a portfolio, 3 references that all checked out, and a partnership agreement drafted by his own attorney that looked thorough. That agreement was thorough. What it could not anticipate was what he would do outside of it. We divided the company clearly. He managed vendor relationships, staffing logistics, and day-to-day operations. I managed client relationships, creative direction, and company finances. At least I managed the finances I knew about. In our 2nd year together, we had the strongest quarter the business had ever seen. 3 new corporate clients, a gala contract larger than anything I had landed alone. My partner ordered a bottle of wine at dinner after we closed the last deal and said, "We're just getting started." I believed him. I thought he meant the company. The first sign came 6 months before the letter. A vendor deposit I didn't remember authorizing. My partner explained it as a rate hold he'd placed to secure a venue before pricing increased for the season. The amount wasn't large. The explanation was plausible. I verified the vendor existed, noted it, and moved on. Looking back, that deposit wasn't a discrepancy. It was a test. He was checking whether I verified the things he explained away or whether I trusted him and let it go. I let it go. 3 weeks later, a call came from a number I didn't recognize. A representative from a federal credit union in a city 2 hours away. She was calling to confirm my preferred payment schedule for the business line of credit. I had no record of a business line of credit. I asked her to hold and walked out of the room. I told myself it was a banking error, a wrong number. These things happened. I wrote down the credit union's name and the representative's extension, then called my partner immediately. He didn't answer. He texted back within 2 minutes, in a vendor meeting, call you at 4. He never called at 4. I reached the credit union's general line that afternoon. I explained that I had received a call about a loan I had no record of and asked to speak with someone who could clarify. She asked for my business name and tax identification number, pulled the account, and said, "We do have a business line of credit in your name and your partner's name. It was opened 14 months ago. The current outstanding balance is $194,000. 14 months ago. My partner had been with the company for 18 months. I asked her to send me everything on file. The complete loan application arrived the following morning. 31 pages. I read every word at my kitchen table. My name was on the application. My business address. My personal credit score had been used as part of the qualification. And on page 4, there was an electronic signature attributed to me with a DocuSign timestamp showing the exact date and time of signing. I had never received that DocuSign link. I had never seen page 4. I had never signed anything. But there was what looked exactly like my signature. But the third thing I found in that document was the one that stopped me cold. The DocuSign activity logged the automated record that tracks every interaction with the document, listed the IP address associated with my signature. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't my home network. It wasn't my business address. I ran it through a basic IP lookup tool that evening. It resolved to a commercial building in the city 2 hours away, where the credit union was located. The same city where my partner had grown up, and where I would later confirm he maintained a small private office. I went back to our business bank records that night and pulled every transaction from the previous 14 months. 6 wire transfers I had no memory of authorizing. Combined total, $62,000. Each one sent to an entity called Redline Operations Group. I searched that LLC on the state business registry the following morning. It had been registered 22 days before the loan application was signed. The registered agent was my partner. I sat with that fact for a long time. Then I started looking for who else he had done this to. It took 4 days. I found 2 names. The first was a woman I will call Sandra. She had been my partner's co-owner at a promotional marketing firm 4 years earlier. She had posted in a small business legal forum about a loan drawn on her company without her knowledge or consent. She had reached a private settlement. The post noted that her former partner had simply opened a new company afterward and continued operating. The second was a former employer, a mid-size event staffing company, that had terminated my partner after an internal audit revealed vendor payments routed to a shell account. That company had chosen not to press charges in exchange for repayment of $41,000. He had repaid them, which meant they had never flagged him publicly, which meant every future partner he approached, including me, would have found clean references and a professional history with no disclosed incidents. I did the math at my kitchen table the night I found the second case. 3 known victims, more than $325,000. And he was still operating. The man I will call Marcus in this story had not made one bad decision under financial pressure. He had built a system, and I had just found the edges of it. My attorney told me to settle. She said it the way experienced attorneys say things they want you to understand, without argument, plainly, and without softening. You're both on that loan. If you fight this and lose, you are liable for the full outstanding balance plus legal fees. Fighting the claim could cost you $30,000 to $50,000 before you ever see a courtroom, and you may still be held liable at the end of it. She paused. Banks don't care who actually took the money. They care who signed. I told her the signature was forged. She said I would need to prove that. I asked what proof would require. She gave me the name of a handwriting analyst and an estimate for expert testimony fees. Then she said what everyone would say to me for the next 3 weeks. Sometimes the right answer is to minimize the damage and move forward. My accountant said the same thing. My closest friend, someone who had watched me build this company from nothing, sat across from me at a coffee shop and said, I know this isn't fair, but you have employees counting on you. Is it worth burning everything to chase someone who's already moved the money? I had no answer for her. I nodded and drove home in silence. That night, I sat in my car in my own driveway for 45 minutes with the engine off. It was February, cold enough to see my breath against the windshield. I kept thinking about my employees, 3 people whose paychecks depended on my company staying functional. I thought about the wedding clients I had been working with for 7 months, who had nothing to do with any of this and were counting on me to deliver. I thought about everything I had built and what it would mean to watch it collapse under a debt I had never agreed to carry. I want to be honest about what I almost did. I pulled up the credit union's website on my phone that night and looked up their loan modification process. I was 1 phone call away from asking about a settlement figure. And then I did something nobody had told me to do. Not because I had a strategy, because I had a habit, the same one I formed in year 1, when a vendor denied a verbal agreement I couldn't prove. I called the credit union's fraud division the following morning and requested one specific thing: the complete loan application file. Everything on record: the DocuSign activity logs, the IP address history, the wire transfer confirmations, every page they held. The representative said the request would take 5 to 7 business days to process. I said I would wait. The file arrived on a Tuesday. 64 pages. I printed every page and laid them across my dining room table in chronological order. I am not an attorney. I want to say that clearly before I go further. But I am someone who reads documents with precision, and what I found inside those 64 pages was a trail Marcus had not considered carefully enough to close. The DocuSign activity log showed 2 separate access events on the loan document. The first time it was opened, a device connected to an IP address that would later be traced to our shared business network, a network Marcus accessed regularly during his workday. The second event, the signature itself, a different device, a different IP address, resolving to the city 2 hours away. 2 devices, 2 locations, 1 signature attributed to me that had never once touched a device I owned or a network I used. I made 2 columns on a legal pad. Column 1, what the bank had on file. Column 2, what it meant. Then I moved to the wire transfer records. 6 transfers over 14 months. each one initiated from our business account on dates I cross-referenced against our client event calendar. 4 of the 6 had occurred while I was on site, managing events full business days, away from the office with client communication logs, vendor sign-in sheets, and time-stamped photographs placing me at the venue at the exact hours the transfers were made. He had moved our money while I was working. While I was managing the clients, he had told me I was the best person to handle. I looked up the federal statute. 18 U.S.C. Section 114, false statements made to a federally insured financial institution on a loan application. Up to 30 years in federal prison. Fines up to $1 million per false statement. I wrote the statute number at the top of my legal pad and circled it. I also found the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center IC3. Gov, which accepts complaints for federal financial crimes, including bank fraud and wire fraud. I had not known it existed before that week, and one name I kept coming back to in the wire transfer records. A name that appeared on the Redline Operations Group account as a secondary authorized user, not Marcus's name. Someone else. Someone who had been present in the financial structure of this scheme before Marcus had ever approached me about a partnership. I printed my complete documentation. 112 pages. I submitted a formal fraud complaint to the credit union's fraud division, with the IP discrepancy, the LLC formation date, the wire transfer timeline, the event calendar documentation, and the federal statute citation attached. Then I filed a companion complaint through ic3.gov. I did it alone, at my dining room table, at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. No announcement, no call to anyone. I hit submit, closed my laptop, and went to bed. The credit union's fraud investigation team contacted me 12 days later. The senior fraud analyst assigned to my case did not ask whether I had truly signed the documents. She asked what I could demonstrate about the specific IP address. She asked whether I had documentation of my physical location on each wire transfer date. She asked whether I had the LLC formation filing and the registration timestamp. I had all of it, already organized, already labeled. She told me the bank would conduct a forensic review of the DocuSign records and that they were independently interested in the IP geolocation data. She used one word that I wrote down immediately. She said the timeline I had submitted was notable. I asked what happened to a borrower's loan liability during an active fraud investigation. She said she could make no guarantees, but that when a forgery determination was confirmed through the bank's internal forensic process, standard procedure was to remove the defrauded party from the obligation and pursue recovery directly from the responsible party. 3 weeks later, she called again. The bank's forensic review had confirmed everything I submitted. 2 distinct devices. 2 separate locations. The IP address associated with my signature carrying no connection to any address, network, or device ever associated with my personal or business accounts. The bank had independently verified the geolocation. She asked me to provide a formal written statement confirming I had not authorized the loan and had not executed the signature. I had it written and submitted within the hour. Then, she asked me a question I had not expected. She asked whether I had any reason to believe Marcus had engaged in this type of conduct before. I told her what I had found. Sandra's forum post. The staffing company settlement. The $41,000 repayment that had kept him invisible to every future partner who ran a standard background check. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We may be looking at a pattern of conduct across multiple victims. That changes how we approach this." I didn't fully understand what that meant until 6 weeks later when the FBI contacted me directly. The agent calling was working a multi-victim financial crimes case, and my IC3 complaint had connected to 3 other open investigations. Marcus had not stopped with me. There was a 4th victim, a logistics company in another state, that had only recently identified a line of credit discrepancy in their accounts. When the agent gave me the total confirmed loss across all 4 cases, I asked him to repeat it. $412,000. My $200,000 loan. Sandra's $85,000. The staffing company's $41,000. A 4th case involving $86,000 in unauthorized credit draws. 4 business partners. At least 4 states. A pattern stretching back at least 6 years, refined with each new target. And then came the part I did not expect. The FBI had located Marcus through the IP address records, the same records that had been sitting in the credit union's fraud file the entire time. He was in Florida, and he had already incorporated a 5th company, a clean entity, with no visible connection to anything traceable back to me registered 5 weeks after I filed my IC3 complaint. He had been actively preparing his next move while I was still building my folder. The agent also mentioned something before ending the call. There was a secondary name in the wire transfer records, the same name I had flagged in the Redline Operations Group account authorization, who appeared to have facilitated transactions across multiple victims. A financial participant, not just a bystander. They were still working on it. He said he would follow up when they had more. He never followed up. Federal charges were filed that spring. Bank fraud. Wire fraud. Aggravated identity theft, a charge that carries a mandatory 2-year federal sentence served consecutively, meaning it cannot run at the same time as any other sentence, and no plea agreement can eliminate it. The credit union formally removed my name from the loan obligation 3 weeks after the charges were filed. I was not responsible for a single dollar of it. The civil recovery path was separate. I filed a civil claim against Marcus in state court for the $62,000 in wire transfers that had been routed out of our business accounts. I was also advised I was eligible to file a surety bond claim, though actual financial recovery against a defendant facing federal charges could take years to materialize. I filed the civil claim anyway. The judgment exists. It accrues interest. It does not expire. 9 months after the Thursday morning in March, when I opened that letter at my kitchen counter, I stood inside the venue we had been preparing for when all of this started. The gala I was afraid I wouldn't be able to finish. 240 guests, every vendor on time, every detail the way I had designed it. The client cried when she walked into the room. I had a glass of water and watched it happen from the back of the hall. There is something I want to say about justice before this ends. It did not undo the 14 months. It did not restore the nights at my dining room table when I should have been sleeping, or the conversations with my employees where I tried to project confidence I didn't have, or the particular kind of damage that happens to a person when someone they genuinely trusted turns out to have been calculating against them from the very beginning. Justice does not fix any of that. Anyone who says that justice heals the wound is describing something simpler than what actually happens to a real person in the aftermath. What justice does if you document carefully, file patiently, and stay methodical when every instinct tells you to either fight loudly or give up quietly is close the door. Marcus cannot do what he did to a 5th victim without his federal record appearing in every background check, every business registry, every professional database he encounters for the rest of his working life. That door is closed. Not because I confronted him, not because I made a phone call or sent a threatening message or told his story publicly before the evidence was complete. Because I submitted a folder to the right institutions and let the bank's own records do what they had always been capable of doing. I was the third known victim of this particular system. Not the first. Simply the first one who requested the complete documentation file and built a folder before deciding what to do. Everyone before me had been told to let it go. I didn't let it go. Not because I was braver or more resourceful than anyone who came before me, because I had a habit, and that habit built the folder, and the folder closed the door. Some doors need to be closed. Mine did. 14 months late, but on my own terms. 6 weeks after the federal charges were filed, a message came through my business contact form. A woman in Denver. Event coordinator. Smaller operation than mine, 3 employees, 7 years in. She said she had found my story through a small business legal forum post that had been shared in a Facebook group for event professionals. She said her accountant had left her company without notice 3 months earlier. In the week since, she had discovered that several of her business payment accounts had been quietly linked to a third-party payment processor she had never authorized. She sent me the processor name. She sent me the account registration date. And then she sent me the name of the person listed as the authorized account holder on the registration. When I read that name, I recognized the work. If any part of this story sounds familiar, the pattern, the method, the type of documentation that finally mattered, drop it in the comments. You may already be one piece of someone else's folder.